like out as a biomarker compared to other biomarkers? What do you feel is more promising about this compared to things like NFL?
Yeah, so I think the advantage of the central vein is that it's actually getting down to the pathology of multiple sclerosis. And so when you look at an MS lesion under the microscope, you can see that those MS lesions are typically centered around veins. So we know that that is a pathological hallmark of the disease, right? And we know that when we look at pathology, we can confirm that. And what we've been searching for is a method to detect that using imaging. And the central vein has emerged, and I think it's promising for two reasons. One, it's specific for MS. And so we know that if a lesion has a central vein, we know the likelihood that that lesion is an MS lesion increases significantly. And then second is that we can implement this MRI algorithm quite easily into clinical practice. That is, we are already using MRI to make a diagnosis of MS. So just adding a sequence that might be sensitive to central veins is a relatively easy addition to make the diagnosis a little bit easier and to accelerate the diagnosis. I would also highlight the fact that the diagnostic criteria is somewhat complicated. You have to meet different criteria, which sometimes are clinical, sometimes are paraclinical, MRI, CSF, and I think that that requires a high level of expertise. One thing about the central vein that it's interesting is that perhaps it can do away with maybe some of that complication, and it's an easy kind of single readout test that could potentially be used. Just to clarify, we don't intend the central vein to replace the diagnostic criteria. We intend the central vein to be used in conjunction with the diagnostic criteria. And in that sense, it's an easy biomarker to use because it's something that perhaps you can count 6 or 3 lesions and say, in 20 seconds you look at an MRI and you have a good diagnostic biomarker. You kind of mentioned neurofilament light, which is interesting because that's something that contrasts with the central vein. So there's been a lot of work done of neurofilament light as a treatment biomarker. In terms of how specific it is to MS, its specificity is low. So we know that neurofilament levels can perhaps increase with injury to the peripheral nervous system. They can increase to injury in the nervous system outside of MS. And that's why the central vein is quite attractive because it's very, very specific to MS. We think it's uncommon for other conditions to have lesions develop around veins. So it's attractive because it's pathologically sensitive. It's attractive because it's easy to use. And it's already being done in a modality that we use every day, that neurologists are used to using, that neuroradiologists are used to using, and that really comes at no additional risk to the patient and is quite easy to get done.